Right, good morning everybody, welcome to the Wednesday Bike Club. And yes, you join me on another glorious day in France on my favourite bit of road as we head towards Le Roc. Because I haven't done anything from the Le Roc for ages. Getting out in the early morning and on the bike is fabulous. And it's sort of partly what I want to talk about, really sort of the essence of it really. And it's to do with, you know, are we, as technology increases, you know, are we at risk of losing the sort of the essence of what a motorbike is, or sort of motoring in general? But I love this bit of road. The essence of motorcycling, because of all the rider aids and things that we're doing to sanitize, you know, the driving and riding experience. So I thought we'd talk about that. And just for this Wednesday, so grab a coffee and a croissant if you can, and let's go and talk about that. Come on. Right, hello everybody. So here we are at Le Roc, and it's still here, still standing. It's like my little Stonehenge, isn't it? I don't remember that being upright. But back to it. So yes, we've got the lovely morning light today, which is really nice. I've got my trusty classic 350 here, and this is what sort of made me think about this, you know, this subject today, because we've been riding this around, and you know that beautiful simplicity of a bike like this, and lots of bikes like this, where your riding experience is still in your control. Do you know what I mean? It's that thing where the bike itself is, you know, is still talking to you as you ride along. You've got your gear changes and the clutch and, you know, the suspension. It's all very simple, basic mechanical process, which, when you think about it, isn't that why we love motorcycles? You know, I can always remember, and it's the same with cars, isn't it? I can remember the first time I was given a car to drive. I was actually, I was a gamekeeper at the time, and I just sort of started my job on this huge estate in Sussex, and the big boss had come down in his Range Rover, and the underkeeper there had his little Land Rover Series 3 Land Rover. I think that was his first vehicle. And the keeper, the big boss, wanted to take the keeper around to show him a few things, and he just turned to me and said, "All right, take his Land Rover and to the other side of the estate there, and we'll meet you there." The guys whose Land Rover was knew that I'd never driven a vehicle before, and he told me he can't drive, and it was like, no, I manage, because I was so excited about doing it, because I had that, I'd already had that sort of playing around with tractors, changing gear in tractors, and that's one of the beautiful essences, isn't it? The real essence of mechanical things like motorbikes and cars, isn't it, at the time? Because we're going way back into the 80s, is that ability to change gear and the sound that the engine makes as you change gear. It's that clutch in, into gear, and the engine note changes, doesn't it? There's something very primal about that. It's very odd, isn't it? And I think that my concern is, if you like, my thoughts around this is that are we heading to a time when we're going to lose that? You know, we're heading to the world of E-clutches and DCT gearboxes, all the other ways, you know, active suspension, yaw control, and, you know, lean sensitive, you know, brakes and all this sort of stuff. And are we are we at risk of losing why we love motor vehicles? And we don't really understand why motor vehicles are such an integral part. Why we loved, you know, it's the sound, isn't it? It's the sound of the engine. You know, things are getting quieter. You know, you look at electric cars, electric bikes for that matter, there's no sound, is there? And if you've never, I suppose there'll come a generation who have no concept of the sound of a vehicle, of a motor vehicle. And, you know, the electric propulsion will just be something that is just, it becomes a very everyday thing. It's like switching on a blender or a, you know, your toaster or your kettle and your washing machine. And, you know, we always say, well, it's just a washing machine on wheels, isn't it? But we're on that journey now, aren't we, of removing that part of that sort of joy that we've had in life, of the purely mechanical device to get us around. You know, we've gone, I suppose people maybe back in the day thought, oh, you know, oh my God, we're going to lose the horse, you know, because, you know, when the combustion engine was invented, you know, I suppose people thought, oh, well, I don't want that, you know, God, blooming hell, it's just a, you know, a clattering machine on wheels. I want my horse. So maybe it's the same thing. These things, you know, they're generational, aren't they? Just go and come and go. But I suppose the speed at which these things now change is so much faster now, isn't it? Can hear a motor big. It sounds like a big boxer twin going around there. But we're going to start losing that, and there's nothing we can do about it, really, is there? I think at the end of the day, and that sounds very defeatist, doesn't it? But when we've been riding this Enfield, and that real pleasure in the mechanical process of letting the clutch out, pulling away, turning the starter button, changing gear, getting that change in engine sound, coming to a hill, you know, changing down to go up a hill, that sort of stuff. we're on the precipice, aren't we, of losing all that, because all those little bits of pleasure that come with a motorbike like this are slowly being eroded. They're slowly being removed from us as we improve the safety of the motorcycle. You know, I always wonder sometimes, you know, it's this thing like of traffic jams, isn't it? What's the way to remove a traffic jam? And it is linked to this, so stay with me. You know, how do you remove the pain of traffic jams? Well, you know, as your car goes on, say, a motorway, it sits into a slot like a Skeletrix car. So there can never be any traffic jams because it always moves at the same speed. Your little car drops a little thing in it, and it goes into a slot, and it puts you at the right distance behind the vehicle in front of it, and your sat nav will tell that little slot, a bit like a you know, like a train track. It tells the signal to take you off at that point, and then maybe if you're lucky you could go back into manual control again. And that's sort of where we are. That's sort of like the next logical step, isn't it? I don't know, those things have been talked about. They've like wires in the road which will guide your vehicle and keep you separated from the vehicle in front. And that's the end of that, isn't it? That's a huge pleasure that we have, which will be denied to us because, you know, as you know, the thing about vintage vehicles, and we sort of don't seem to have quite got to motorbikes yet, but it will all be lumped in together. You know, the classic cars like my Mini, which are 25, 26 years old, are slowly being kicked off the road because we can't afford to tax them. You know, they're being taxed off the road, and eventually it's what will happen to these, is that vehicles that don't, you know, come to the required standard with emissions and all the rest of it, they'll be kicked off the road because we won't be able to tax them. And we think, well, it's just not worth paying £400 or £500 a year to tax this motorbike. You know, I'm just going to have to buy the new thing. And that's the end of it. And the sad thing is the speed of that change is so fast now that we won't have time to sort of digest it or get used to it, or slowly watch it go away in the distance. You know, there won't be any sort of, it won't be a slow, gradual decline in these things. It'll be almost like an overnight thing, won't it, for us? And that's really sad, I think. I'd love to know if someone's ever really thought about why the combustion engine is gives us such a thrill. And it does, doesn't it? You know, you watch those old movies, things like Le Mans, you know, with Steve McQueen and thing, you know, you get the images of the rev counters going, I love those rev counters, they go, rather than sweet. There's a word for those, but I can't remember what it was. Dave did tell me at Boulder, is that there's something so exciting about that. And it's the same with motorbikes, isn't it? If you've got a motorbike with a rev counter, how often do we say, oh God, I wish this had a rev counter with it? Why do we need a rev counter? We don't need it, actually. Technically, we don't need it. We can hear the engine. We know the sound it's making. We know when we're ready to change gear. I don't need a little light to tell me when to change gear. You know, I can feel that. I can sense that because we've become part of the mechanical process within a motorbike. We can hear that, and that's the joy of that, isn't it? Revving it to a certain point and then changing gear, and the engine note changes. But we love to watch rev counters. Well, I do. It's even more important than the speedo, isn't it? You know, we can have a digital speedo with just the numbers on it, like my Harley does, but it's got the rev counter as the most important part. That's the pleasure in it. I don't really know why. I wish someone had done a study. They probably have. If someone knows it, tell me what the study is, and I'll come back with it. But I think when you look at cars, they're so sanitized now in the actual physical act of driving that so much of the pleasure of the drive has been taken away. But we've sort of accepted that, haven't we? You know, electric cars, I don't think there's no visceral pleasure, if that's the right word, in driving an electric car now. Yes, the speed is colossal, and the acceleration is amazing, but the actual physical joy has been removed, hasn't it? And I think that's the changing gear, and that, you know, how many modern cars now have a gearbox that we can physically grab hold of the gear stick and change it. We don't have that. It's all done for us. It's that they're all automatic, or they're all variable gears, and you know, we just press the throttle and it goes. We stick it into reverse and it goes. And I think it's quite. I think it's sad that, might not be the right word, but I think it's a shame that there'll come a generation that will never experience the joy and the pleasure of the combustion engine. You know, you'd like to think that if there had been like 2 or 3 generations that have never enjoyed that, but then you suddenly go, so right, get everybody together, right, here's a combustion engine, here's a V8, or here's a screaming, I don't know, Ferrari, or an early Formula 1 car, say, well, watch this. And you can imagine that people would suddenly, there'd be like a reawakening of like an evolutionary point in time. You'd wake up and go, oh my God, what was that? And I think that's where we are. We're on the precipice now of these rider aids and driver aids, which is taking away that essential pleasure of a vehicle. And maybe it'd be my generation, it'll be the last people to really experience vehicles like this, because we won't have them anymore. They'll just be museum pieces, you know. And it's very sad, isn't it? Really sad. I suppose there'll be a revival at some point, you know, like vinyl records, won't there? We'll get this revival. But I think the problem is with motorcycles and those cars, that those cars which would have been affordable at that point, they'll either be in museums, or they would have all been crushed at that point, because we won't be allowed to take them on the road. And that will be the end of it. It'll be a real sharp, hard cut off with this. But it'd be fascinating to know where we are in, I don't know, even 5 years. Where, you know, with the price of petrol and all the rest of it, and as we slowly, you know, it's taken a long time, is it? We will slowly eventually lose the oil-based economies, I suppose, maybe. Maybe third world countries won't, but we're going to slowly move away from oil, I suppose, even though there's plenty of oil there. But I suppose also it's the congestion on the roads and all the rest of it, and maintaining the roads. And that's why coming out here is sort of tinged with a slight sadness somewhere, that you can't quite put your hand on, but you know it's there, that I won't be able to do this forever. You know, I'm going to have to stop this at some point. And that's why I think we should make the absolute most of the time we have with our beautiful bikes, and just bloody do it. You know, do those things. They will only become memories, unfortunately. So we've got to experience them now, haven't we? Before the riding and self-transport experience becomes so sanitized we won't recognize it in 10 years time, 5 years, 10 years time, and that's really sad. So I think we may be the last 1 or 2 generations will get a chance to experience this in its fullest. As an old Land Rover Defender goes past, how quickly that's going to change. We've been driving those things since the 40s, haven't we? 40s, 50s. How different is the modern Defender to the original one? How much of that experience has changed. I drove Land Rovers for many years, and that's a very basic mechanical experience, but it bears no resemblance to what we have today. The shape may look similar, but the actual experience is completely gone. Yeah, but there we are. I suppose that's a bit of a downer, isn't it, today? Doesn't it feel like a bit of a downer? But I know I've got to get on this bike and go for a ride now and just enjoy myself and just enjoy the experience, lap it up, just absolutely lap up the experience, and just feel that energy that it gives you as you ride along. But I'll try not to feel too sad about it. Right, hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you in the next episode, which will probably be back from home, I think, because this is a Wednesday one. So the next Saturday one might be from home, but I'll see, I can't remember. Right, take care, look after yourself, and ride safe, and enjoy it.